Hey guys, Sean from Top 5 Fit. Just checking in and kind of catching you up to speed on what's been going on with the concept of training like a superhero. So, things that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks, there's that whole we thing again, because of course sometimes I think I'm Venom. The idea is trying to cover as much ground as possible in a 12 to 16 hour period. And when I say ground, I mean making sure that there's something in place for flexibility, endurance, strength, power, speed, dot, dot, dot. So start off with the mileage. Obviously, I have to run a little bit. Both bikes are in the shop right now, so we're not really spending any time on, that type of cardio. So it's all on foot. Right now, it's actually in shoes. There is a tendency to move towards putting the Vibrams on and going back out to spend time barefoot. But the older that I get, I tend to want to not destroy my bones. So we went ahead and put the shoes back on the feet for the concrete work, and anything that happens in the trails is obviously back to Vibrams or barefoot if possible. Um, some of the trails around me are actually eroding, so that has changed up what's available as far as training is concerned and how the trails are actually feeling on the feet. But as far as the mileage is concerned, Mondays have been a standard 3 to 5 miles in the morning. Tuesdays and that's kind of been the case with Mondays and Fridays, about 3 to 5. The difference between the two, Monday tends to be a little bit slower, a little bit more recovery in nature because we're coming off of a long run on the weekend as well as the accumulation of miles throughout the week. And there's also the idea of we're trying to stay on our feet as much as possible. There's a runner in the community in our area known as 8 Mile Pete, and Pete literally runs 7 days a week, 8 miles. The interesting thing about this 65-year-old gentleman who does this is he's race ready 24 hours a day. 8 miles a day, if a full marathon comes up on the weekend, he hops right into it. And there's little to no damage and picks up his 8 mile regimen usually the next day, unless he decides to push for pace. So the concept of staying on the feet as much as possible and getting as many miles in on as many days during the week as possible, that's there. So that's why you see the 3 to 5 miles on Mondays and Fridays. Slow and relaxed on Monday. Friday tends to be a little bit closer to race pace, what I'd actually like to do in a given event. Right now, the only event that I'm actually registered for is the 1,000, and some of you may have seen this online. If not, it's a great organization. It's a great website. Feel free to check it out. It's called ilovetorun.org. I don't really love to run, but the idea of medals I like, and they have a 1,000 mile club. So basically, in one calendar year, you have to accumulate 1,000 miles. So that's really the only thing that's kind of out there, the carrot that's being dangled as to why this is happening. Not to mention, in the comic books, the superheroes can cover ridiculous distances, so there has to be an endurance component in the training. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are what I like to call two-a-days. Usually Tuesday morning and Thursday morning runs outside. The Tuesday morning is usually speed of some nature, so we're doing 100 to 200 yard distances all out and then walking for about 30 seconds and then repeating that. That's about a 20 to 30 minute regimen right now, no more. The legs get pretty sore from that. They get really sore from that. So we try not to do more than about a half an hour because there's still the rest of the week to come. Thursday mornings is a little less speed, a lot more hill, a lot more climbing. We tend to find every major hill in the neighborhood and in the trail that we can go after and just spend time going up and down it, up and down it. There's really no, covering distance per se. It's just you're either climbing or you're descending, and that's what's going on for 30 to 45 minutes. The second part of the day is usually spent in the gym on the elliptical, like what I like to call passive cardio. There's no impact involved. I've beat my joints up quite a bit doing the speed work and the hill work. So the cardio component still needs to be there, especially when we're talking about trying to reach a goal of 40, 50 to 60 miles per week. So we still have to make sure that cardio is constantly being tested. Another concept that's kind of thrown into all of this is there's, you know, and for whatever reason, Northeast Ohio tends to be a hotbed for ultra runners and marathoners and extremely fast 5Kers and 10Kers. And the smart thing to do is to listen, especially if you're going to work with runners. One of the things that I picked up on from a guy in the, you know, older gentleman who's run 60 plus 100-mile races is the concept of actually running on tired legs and making sure that you are not always going out into your training day on fresh legs. So that's where the 2 a day comes in. Now, considering the mileage count is still a little high, the Wednesday and Saturday or Sunday, depending upon, you know, expectations of life and so on and so forth. Wednesday and one of the days, Saturday and Sunday on the weekend, are both longer days. So pushing for 6 to 8 miles, possibly 10 miles on a Wednesday, and then the climb is actually happening on the weekend. So if we decide to go after a full or, you know, something longer, 50K or whatever, the weekend climb is where I'll start to see, you know, 12s, 14s, 16s, 20s, so on and so forth. But that midweek 8 to 10 mile, 6 to 8 to 10 miler, that's kind of very important to remind the legs of their responsibility. You are going to have to move, and you're going to have to move for a long period of time. So that's where that comes in. There is an event that's in the back of the mind that we'd like to go after, but we haven't really registered for it yet. You have to go through 2 phases to get through any kind of race and event: the training to get to the event and the event itself. So for right now, I'm just kind of focusing on the training side of it. And as we get closer, and obviously the confidence builds and so on and so forth, you know, we'll go ahead and put the $150 down or whatever, pay for it, and go get the bling. But right now, the focus is on performance and getting everything done. And that's basically the mileage. Now, on to the flexibility and mobility part of it. Obviously, you have to be able to move. I found myself watching Batman v Superman, and it's kind of amazing the positions that Ben Affleck could actually get himself into, even though it's a movie and it's choreographed, so on and so forth. But still, you're talking about a 200-plus pound male with a lot of muscle on him that's actually mobile. And you really don't see that a whole lot, so that's something that I try to keep in, you know, to the training. So to make sure that we're actually spending time on that, Mondays and Wednesdays have become yoga mornings. Yeah, before we actually go out, I found a couple of 20 and 30-minute beginner yoga. I'd never taken yoga in my life. I don't have the patience for it, but because of the raves of mobility improvement that I've heard over the years from people that swear by it, I would be foolish not to try to put it into the regimen. Not to mention, there is the requirement to be mobile if you're trying to train like a superhero. So Monday and Friday, we have added into the conditioning regimen yoga. And I have to say, it's not horrible. It's not the worst thing I've ever done. If anything, it definitely lets you know that there are some areas that need worked on. There are some areas that are very tight and could ultimately be, you know, slowing you down when it comes to your speed, or putting a hitch in your movement when it comes to your strength. But either way, you're addressing a problem, and that helps lower the potential for injury and keeps you in the game longer. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I stick with the resistance bands as far as mobility is concerned, and that's the entire stretching regimen, which we have videos for if you want to see what that's all about. But all of the upper body stretches, all of the lower body stretches, and then of course the ankle mobility activities as well. That's throughout the day. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I kind of pepper the day with that. So I'll hit it right when I get in here in the morning for about 5 minutes. I'll hit it while there's clients in here. I'll work at my desk for a bit and then go after it again. But it's something that you really kind of need to spend time with if you want to improve. And just doing it maybe once after training, especially when you're talking about a 6 and 7 day a week training regimen, it's just not going to cut it. So in order to keep up with the stress and, you know, demand that you're actually putting on yourself trying to train like this, you need to step up your game as far as mobility is concerned. And of course, there's all kinds of research out there that says stretching doesn't do anything. You know, if you want to believe that, that's completely up to you. But I find personally that I move a hell of a lot better in a strength realm and in a speed realm and in a power realm if my mobility is in check. If things are tight and they're not firing properly, or I can't execute a full range of motion, that's usually when compensation starts happening and something goes wrong, and I don't like things going wrong. So that's what's happening as far as that category is concerned. Moving on to the strength and power, I do tend to combine those because basically anything that falls into the power category, kind of, I'm looking at powerlifting. I'm looking at more like my hang cleans and that kind of stuff. And I don't spend a ridiculous amount of time on those movements. One, because I'm not that good at them. Two, because the area that I'm in isn't always conducive to me doing that. But I do pepper the week with them. So there will tend to be, a quick snatch from the ground or something just to kind of remind the body that it has to move quickly and with a lot of muscle behind it. Strength-wise, it's pretty much a basic bodybuilder-esque split with an emphasis on rep as opposed to load. I know that doesn't sound like strength training. However, when we're talking about reps, I'm talking anywhere from 6 to 8 to 12 reps with 225 and 315. I tend to hover around, I've said that in a previous video before, I tend to hover around those weights quite a bit because one, I don't need a spotter to actually help me move those loads, and I can crank out a lot of reps with them. So it's a nice balance for me when it comes to, okay, you are strength training because you're using basically more than your body weight, which anytime you do that, you're strength training. But at the same time, I'm focusing on breaking that 10 count, breaking that 8 count, and actually getting a little deeper burn into the tissue, with each movement. So that kind of covers, the strength side of things and the power side of things. But the split is shoulders and core on Mondays and chest and tris on Tuesdays. Legs are all day long on Wednesdays. So even though there's a longer run, we'll throw in, very light walking lunges, very light squats, very light Bulgarian lunges. All of these movements are important because they help realign the joints. They help kind of remind the muscle tissue how it's supposed to be firing. And if I don't do that, I find usually that the morning run on Thursday doesn't feel right at all. Mechanics are all off. It's almost like I'm relearning how to run. So there's a scenario where I'm basically using an evening of strength training like rehab instead of just, trying to move as much load as possible. Now, when the weekends come, I do tend to go after legs again for, a second session, but I spend a little bit more time with machines instead of dumbbells, barbells, mainly because I can actually jack the weight a little bit more, but only worry about one plane to move in. So like on a leg press, which right away people, they piss on leg presses left and right, but the nice thing about leg presses is you can stack an ungodly amount of weight on it. So you can get into 600 pounds, 800 pounds, 1,000 pounds of resistance trying to crush you, and you still have to extend your legs. If you get under a bar doing that and you're not a power lifter and you haven't been training that way, obviously that weight can kill you. But there's benefits. So we try to make sure and touch on just about everything that at least the gyms that I spend time in, including my own, have to offer. I don't have a lot of machines in my facility, and I kind of don't want them. They're bulky, they take up a lot of space, huge footprints, and they require a lot of maintenance. But it doesn't mean they're completely unnecessary. And I tend to keep them into my training as well because there is a place for that singular A to B and back to A movement. On top of all of that, we look at nutrition. There was a point when I was trying to kind of dwell within the realm of macro and counting and taking a look at what my protein needs are for the day, what my fat needs are for the day, carb needs day, and with trying to maintain the training regimen plus family life plus work, it became a hassle. So now I'm basically on a treat myself like a zoo animal mentality. The meals are pretty much the same every single day. I've started off in the mornings with a mixture of about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of oatmeal, and then we throw in another 40 to sometimes 60 grams worth of protein on top of that. The second meal of the day is usually about 6 to 8 eggs. Only 4 of those are whole, the rest are white. That's cooked in coconut oil. And third meal of the day is usually some kind of shake that I make at home. Do tend to bad habits show up with that particular shake. It's usually peanut butter, which isn't a horrible thing, but the Hershey's chocolate syrup sometimes goes behind it. And I make note of that because just about everybody out there who spends any time training goes through little phases like that. And that little bit of chocolate in the middle of the day is kind of this is your reward because you're doing all of this training. Now, some people do that with alcohol and drugs and whatever and blah, 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 but I, as of right now, am using Hershey's chocolate syrup in that middle that middle shake. So that's what that's for. Not to mention the fact that some old school football mentality pops in, restoring glycogen levels, getting a little bit more sugar. Basically, since we're pulling longer mileage and two-a-days throughout the week, I sometimes am concerned about not having enough energy to get into the next training regimen. So I tend to make up for it in small sugary blasts like that throughout the day, which, by the way, is horrible for your physique. It doesn't do a damn thing for your six-pack, but it can make you, feel pretty strong and powerful going into your next training. After that, there is usually a dinner of some sort, which is vegetables and protein, and it kind of stays there. Nice lean chicken breast, ground beef, something along those lines, salmon, and then basically a steamed vegetable or, greens over top of, and a salad bowl size of it so I actually feel like I'm full. And that's pretty much the dance. So that's what we try to actually cover in a given week. That's what we're trying to maintain and obviously climb to a level to where we can actually choose a given race and then hop into it and see where the performance is at. Training like a superhero is not easy. It's kind of time consuming, it's tough, and it can definitely wear you down. But if you think about everything that's involved, the benefits way outweigh the potential risks of, overtraining or, beating yourself up too much, whatever you want to call it. You feel good, you feel strong, and you can pretty much handle anything that comes your way. So something to think about when you're looking at your own training and look at your own regimen, and the question is, are you actually doing everything that you can? Think about that. Are you covering all the bases that you could be covering? Thanks again. That about wraps it up. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the box. Don't forget to subscribe.